No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken episode number 201. A special edition of the show today because we are continuing our countdown of the 50 worst people in the UK today. So, a little reminder that top of the list last year were James O'Brien, Gary Lineker and Dr. Scholler, but so much has changed. So across the course of the week, we are unveiling a brand new list with the help of my favourite Outspoken regulars. Now, a reminder that the only rule is that the entrants must be living primarily in the UK today, meaning that well-known expats, Prince Harry and Shamima Begum, miss out. What a shame. Today, we kick off with number 30 to number 21 with two of my faves. They are the future of this country, Based and Bougie and Sophie Corcoran. While I have your attention, though, to get the latest breaking news, join a thriving community and communicate directly with me, please sign up to my Substack at www.outspoken.live. There is a completely free option, and this is the best way. Literally, just you entering your email address, which only I receive, by the way, is the best way to protect me against future big tech censorship and ultimately cancellation. You know they want to shut me up, so I really do need you to sign up. It will just take 1 minute and it means so much to me. www.outspoken.live. But now, let's go. At number 30 on the countdown of the worst people in the UK today, up one position from last year, it's that Brexit-hating virgin Femi Oluwole. Another year on, and the most annoying left-wing TV pundit of them all is still dashing around left and right-wing political events. No one wants him inside, dressed in inappropriately tight t-shirts while banging on about Brexit. A sad, tedious, and meaningless life. Sophie Corcoran, when is this guy gonna get a real t-shirt and get a real job too?
You know what? I'm so surprised that he is not higher up on the list, but then I, admit that it's quite a congested list of the worst people in Britain. But my favourite moment of Femi that I really wanted to share with you is, do you remember during COVID when he said that he serenaded his girlfriend on his Casio piano?
That's right. And I'm like, girlfriend?
I can't stop laughing.
I don't believe it, by the way. I don't believe it.
What a guy. I mean, could you imagine if you were on a date in the middle of a park during COVID with Femi, of all people, and you started being serenaded by, like, what is it, hot cross buns on his Casio piano? What would you do?
Run. I would run. And Based and Bougie, isn't it really unfortunate that we have this group of people? Steve Bray was number 49 in the countdown on Monday. And they are like people who just will not accept a democratic vote. Remember, the vote to leave the European Union was the biggest democratic vote in the history of this country. And is it not the most sad existence, trying to deny a democratic vote that happened years and years and years ago? That's not how democracy works. Get over it, move on. Start your campaigning for other things. Try and get a pro-European Union party elected into Parliament. But to constantly try and overturn a democratic vote, there is actually a real dark side to that, right?
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of victimization. Victimization just cannot accept that it is wrong. It just cannot accept, the fact that somebody has defeated them. So what he does is he walks around with these t-shirts and these silly clothes, not realizing that he's actually making a fool out of himself. And I think he just needs to accept the fact that Brexit was successful, and he just kind of needs to just shut up and accept it, because he is making a fool out of himself.
I know. And Sophie, seriously, there is something almost deranged, I think, in the fact that the mainstream media will still continue to platform such a single issue lunatic. I have no problem with it, by the way, if they want to, but I just find it quite extraordinary given that, let's be honest, Femi Oluwole is an extremist. He's on the fringes.
I think nothing's better than when you sort of turn up to like Good Morning Britain, for example, and they tell you that your opponent's Femi, because you just know it's an easy win. It feels so great because I've been on, I think I've been on a couple of times with him. I was on GMB with him, and he's just so easy to tear apart. I mean, the guy's probably like, quite, I can't believe how old he is, by the way. I mean, he's quite a bit older than me, and he still behaves like a child. But it's just astonishing. Like, how are they still there? I mean, I used to get chased down the street by Steve Bray and the small one with the beret shoving her camera in your face when you're trying to go somewhere. It's like, come on, man, give it up now. How long has it been? You know what I mean? Like,
but there's also something quite creepy about that, right? Some weird old leery man chasing after a young female. What? Because you were a Brexit supporter. By the way, Sophie, when I was doing my research, I found out that Steve Bray is only 55. That was very shocking to me.
Yeah, I mean, I love it when my favourite thing being young in politics is when the deranged Ramonas are like, well, you voted for Brexit. And in actual fact, I didn't. I was like in like year 8, so quite, which is really fun. But yeah, how is he?
Okay, that makes me feel incredibly old.
Not as old as Steve Bray or Femi, for that matter, who is a lot older than he should perhaps be acting. But yeah, how is he? He's someone who's, and by the way, he's really privileged, by the way. He did like an internship in Europe and all of this kind of stuff. So he plays the victim quite well, but in actual fact, he's far more privileged than I am. So for someone who likes to rattle on about white privilege, he's got a much more privileged life than I have. So quite hypocritical, actually. Oh God, don't even put him up there. I don't even want to see him. I see him on my street sometimes.
Sorry, yeah. I just had to tell people that guy is really 55, believe it or not. Okay, moving on to number 29 in the countdown. She has dropped 5 positions from last year. It's Scheming Sturgeon, the ex-First Minister of Scotland. Her devastating fall on the countdown aligns with the devastating destruction of her once glittering political career. While finally cleared by Scottish police after a lengthy investigation, Queen Nick, or so her supporters used to call her, she wishes, ditched her ex-SNP CEO husband at his lowest moment and quit politics altogether. She's now seen gracing the Scottish stand-up circuit with lesbian pals. Meanwhile, Scottish independence has never been so far away. And I have to say, based in Bougie, there is something quite beautiful about seeing the political career of Scheming Sturgeon finished. She's just another lefty celebrity now. She ditched her husband when it was no longer politically necessary for her to have the guy by her side. I think she is a truly vile human being who received the comeuppance she deserved.
What's so fascinating to me is the fact that they are calling this woman a queen. What is queen behavior about leaving a person at their worst when it no longer benefits you? I think this is the hypocrisy of women in politics, is that they come on stage and they act like they're all these like righteous women and they're all for women's rights. Mind you, she actually ruined the rights of women in Scotland. And yet she's also the same person to just ditch her husband at their worst. This is not the perfect example of people. And I also saw something online, I may be wrong, but her sister may have released information about I believe the princess's diagnosis 30 minutes before it was actually released.
Yes.
So what about that is queen behavior? A queen is somebody that knows when to stay silent. So yeah, I think she's just a vile woman.
Yes, indeed. That's a very good point. Her sister is very sneaky on social media. That was awful. Sophie Corcoran, of course, it's very odd to see this reinvention of Sturgeon as some type of Scottish stand-up comedian. Unfortunately, Sophie, and some people might think that I'm too harsh, but I will never, ever forget what that woman did during the COVID scam, because she used a virus, and whether you believe in lockdowns or not, and obviously, as you know, I was very much opposed to them, but she used that period to try and drive division between Scottish and English people, to try and create a fake border between the two countries. and even, Sophie, to spread a complete lie that it was the English that had somehow infected Scotland with COVID, when in fact it was actually a lot of her mismanagement of an international conference very early on in the course of the pandemic that resulted in their big outbreak. But to me, that was below the belt, it was beyond the pale, and it showed that this is a woman who actually doesn't give a damn about humanity. All she cares about is politics and increasing her popularity.
Yeah, we don't often get to celebrate good news here on your show because, of course, the state of our country at the minute. But there is some good news in the sense that all of the COVID dictators, Dan, are now gone. We've said goodbye to ScoMo. We've said goodbye to Dan Andrews. We've said goodbye to Trudeau. We said goodbye to Jacinda the Witch. We said goodbye to Nicola Sturgeon. They're all gone.
I know, that is a
positive
thing. That is a positive thing, because what they did over that period was just so awful. And I guess the other positive thing, Sophie, is that actually Scottish independence has never been such a pipe dream. She destroyed it for her own ego.
Yeah, and I think it just goes to show that politics does come around. And it may have taken a couple of years, but the world has made it their view clear, and that all of those leaders eventually got their comeuppance. It does come around, and that's something that we should hold on to. But also, I mentioned, you said about her stand-up career. Her entire political career was essentially comedy. I remember one of her best COVID rules was that we should cut off the bottom of school classroom doors. I mean, she was just totally insane. She said, I did a presentation at uni about the ridiculous COVID rules for one of my modules, and it was on there that the SNP suggested that we should chop off the bottom of school classroom doors during COVID. I mean, she was absolutely nuts, this woman, and I really don't think that she deserved the dignity of resigning. I think that they should have thrown her out. I think she got off far too lightly.
Like our Dern, too gutless to actually allow the people who were so furious to cast them out. And Base and Bougie, I remember being in Scotland quite a lot over that period, and the types of rules that Sophie is talking about were utterly insane. So you're allowed to go into a bar, but the bar was not allowed to play music. I mean, she is like a little dictator, right? And now she's a little dictator with no one to rule and lord over.
I just can't believe the COVID period was actually real. I just cannot believe that we were actually trying to convince ourselves that if we stepped within an inch this way, within an inch that way, we would actually get sick and potentially die. And what's so insane is that if you actually look at the statistics, the people who actually got vaccines and followed these ridiculous rules, they're actually getting more sicknesses and illnesses and deaths more than the people who didn't get the vaccine. Another thing I find fascinating is that a lot of these people, they were promoting the COVID vaccine, and I highly doubt that she even got the vaccine herself. So they all do these things for just political gain. And the COVID era was just, sometimes I can't believe it was real. Sorry.
No, I don't. I can't. I couldn't believe it was real at the time. And I mean, I remember once, because she had all of these ludicrous mask rules, and I think she was at some type of event and she took her mask off, and then she had to apologize. It's like, you have just been hoisted by your own petard, lady. But the thing is, this idea that Sturgeon is some type of nice guy in all of this, absolutely not. I don't use this word lightly, but she was an evil leader. She has completely run Scotland into the ground as a nation, and I will be sickened if she continues to get the kid glove treatment from the mainstream media as she goes on her publicity tour for her new autobiography, Frankly. But let me tell you, quite frankly, that is what I expect to happen. At number 28, Jess Phillips, a new entry for the Perma-Man hater. So desperate is Phillips to protect the Muslim vote, given how close she came to a sectarian candidate beating her at last July's election, she has been prepared to throw her infamous moral superiority out the window. Like when she defended masked men holding Palestinian flags who threatened a Sly News journalist during the so-called riots after the Southport massacre last year, and when asked on LBC about the Muslim men hectoring her during her campaign, she said the real issue was just men in general. I find her, Sophie Corcoran, utterly disgraceful because she couldn't call out the Islam extremists who were putting her under serious threat. She couldn't call them out, but instead she was more than happy to slag off every man in the country because being a man hater is now just completely acceptable.
Yeah, and of course there was something, because obviously we had this big Rupert Lowe scandal that's kind of taken over a lot of the airwaves. Something that sort of went missing with Jess Phillips is that she has broken the parliamentary standards rules for expensive 3 separate times. Why on earth does an MP get to break it 3 times? I mean, how many more times, right? How many more slap on the wrist should they get? Sometimes new MPs break them at the beginning of their term because they don't know what they're doing. Fine, but she is an experienced MP. She has been there for absolutely donkeys. How many more times is she going to get away with it? In my view, they should throw her out. Throw her out. She can't keep getting away with breaking the rules. I mean, if it was a Tory MP, they'd have been slung out the Commons by now. Just saying.
No,
and
it's so
went
true.
unnoticed in the media.
It's so true, but she is one of the media's favourites, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she did. I don't know if she still does. I think they changed her out because she got a cabinet position. She did that podcast with Beth Rigby, and can't remember who else was on it. But so she's one of the sort of, news agent type people, very loved in the media. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to be controversial in the sense that sometimes I like her as a character in the Labour Party. I think she's one of the few that aren't completely bland and boring. But she's gotten away with far too much in terms of breaking the parliamentary rules. And I think, she should have really been sacked from her position for a comment. I can't remember what it was made, but she made an outrageous comment and wasn't sacked for it. And sometimes I'm just like, why does everyone give Jess Phillips a pass? And I think one of the reasons is because she's one of the most sort of, she's got the most character out of a lot of the Labour MPs. A lot of them, like Keir Starmer, are so intensely boring. Jess Phillips is not, and I'll give her that. But she's gotten away with far too much, personally.
Yeah, and very good point, by the way, mentioning her Sly News podcast. Look at this. It was originally with Ruth Davidson and Beth Rigby, and it was called Electoral Dysfunction. And again, based in Bougie, isn't that just another example? I mean, some people say it's funny, but isn't that just another example of man hating? And she truly, truly does seem to hate all men, Jess Phillips. And it's almost accepted now in the mainstream media that it's okay to just make these sweeping negative statements about men.
Well, first off, I just wanted to say, I'm not sure if anyone has actually ever noticed, but she kind of looks like Ian Bill from EastEnders, which I find to be... Sorry, I just can never unsee it, but she literally looks like Ian Bill. Second of all, I find it hilarious that she started this show, whoever co-produced it, calling it dysfunctional, when really and truly she's the dysfunctional one. She defended somebody that was almost about to put her life at risk. However, she decided to decline an investigation.
We've just put some pictures of Jess Phillips up on the screen for you, based in Bougie.
So horrible.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people are not going to unsee that now. But yeah, so she defended someone who was waving a Palestinian flag. However, but she refused to do an investigation towards the grooming scandal. I don't get it. And if she hates men so much, she should hate men enough to actually proceed with the grooming scandal that affected a lot of young girls. This is what I mean when I say a lot of these fake feminists, they pick and choose. They pick and choose when women's rights is important. Because when it comes to the grooming scandal, she absolutely pretended like it wasn't a big deal. But when it comes to just hating men just out of the blue and just making these remarks, that's when she has all this energy. And I just feel like she's the dysfunctional one.
She is. She's totally dysfunctional. And I will never forgive her during that LBC interview when she was quite clearly asked. I watched her speech live on election night. She was being hectored and heckled brutally by Muslim men. And it was Muslim men who had run that sectarian campaign, which very, very nearly saw her lose her seat. And we know Jonathan Ashworth, the Labour MP, who would have been in the cabinet, lost his seat in similar circumstances. And rather than just saying, yep, there was an issue, she said, well, I'm not even going to think about that because to me, this is all just about men. So effectively, totally acceptable for Jess Phillips to hate on white men. That's what we're talking about here. The countdown of the 50 worst people in the UK today continues, and a new entry at number 27, John Sopel, co-host of the Fake News Agents. Now, Sopel's most famous intervention since leaving the British Bashing Corporation, where he harassed and bashed Donald Trump with lefty zealotry for 4 years, has been to defend his mate Hugh Edwards, who would soon be exposed as yet another Beeb pedo. Otherwise, his predictable lefty diatribes are simply proof of the left-wing extremists who are hiding in plain sight at our apparently impartial public broadcaster. And I think, Sophie Corcoran, the position that John Sopel now holds, which is as an activist and a propagandist, makes it utterly clear, and by the way, is completely disgusting that he was given that position to almost be the man holding Donald Trump to account on behalf of the British people for those 4 years, when we just now know that he despises the guy. He's obsessed with hating the guy. There is no impartiality in his journalism. And indeed, probably the only exclusive journalism he has done since taking over the Fake News Agents is to be one of those lone voices defending Hugh Edwards. And how did that work out?
Yeah, so I think one of the best moments that has come from this year is that clip from the snooze agents that were like, you know, when Donald Trump won and they all predicted Cameron to winner, they were just so shocked. Oh, their faces. It was the best moment. They were just so fuming because, I mean, how dare most normal people not think about that? But you're right. It's very telling that not just these guys, but almost whenever someone leaves the BBC, they go on to hold a left-wing political position. So they were never neutral in the first place. I mean, they could say neutrality, but it's quite clear that there is a clear political leaning at the BBC politically when all of their top anchors who eventually leave the BBC go on to be in left-wing broadcasters in some sense. So yeah, especially with Boris, I mean, they gave him a horrible time, and it's clear it was never impartial. And they can claim impartiality, but as soon as they all leave, it's very clear that it's leaning left. I don't know why people say the BBC is pro-Tory, because it's definitely not.
No, very good point. And based on Bougie, he sort of showed himself up in that Hugh Edwards moment, didn't he? Because all he really cared about was sticking up for one of his establishment pals at the BBC, who everyone knew had behaved despicably for years, and doing down the journalism of the Sun newspaper because he considered that to be a right-wing Murdoch publication, which just meant that they've got to be bad. They've got to be a bad thing.
Yeah, adding to what Sophie said, I find that people who are more left-leaning, they are so hypocritical in the sense that you sit there and let me guess, he doesn't support Donald Trump because Donald Trump is probably, I can't say the word, but he's the P word. And oh my gosh, he had relations with his daughter and so on and so forth. Basically just believing the media. But your own friend, there's literal proof, there's literal evidence that Hugh Edwards was a P deviant, but yet you were defending him. Someone who can defend a P word can never ever have my support, and I will never allow around my children. And I think going back to what Sophie said, like any person who comes out of the BBC, they'll always come out with these very left-leaning mindset, which just goes to show that the BBC is just heavily controlled. And the fact that he's even supporting his co-host at the time, Hugh Edwards, just definitely goes to emphasize just how much they are basically being dangled like puppets. You have to say this, you have to support that, and they're not able to have their own opinions. And I think anyone who can support the P word, I can't do it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I find the whole thing fascinating. And Sophie Corcoran, actually, when you look at their reinvention, right, on the newsagents, where they try to claim to be independent journalists, they are absolutely not, because they're still part of Global, which is this mega media brand, owns LBC as well, the Labour Broadcasting Corporation, as I call it now. So really, these are still elitists. They're still in the mainstream media. They effectively got out of the BBC because Tim Davie, the Director General, was attempting to crack down on their ability to spread their left-wing bile. He failed, by the way, because Gary Lineker challenged him, and rather than sacking Lineker on the spot, which he should have done, he gave in. But you remember, Emily Maitlis was going on Newsnight and giving diatribes against Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings. I mean, they were never professional. And it's so funny to me because they will talk till they're blue in the face about how much they care about the BBC and the sanctity of the BBC and the need for impartial journalism. But actually, they don't believe in that at all. They just want business as usual, which is for the entire media ecosystem to continue on the left. I mean, we saw Adam Bolton actually publicly slag off GB News because it upset Britain's very careful media ecosystem. Effectively, what he meant is he meant a left-wing media ecosystem. And I think all of that is being torn down. And sure, the fake news agents at the moment gets a lot of publicity because it's part of that global stable. It gets the massive advertising. But if you look at their YouTube numbers, for example, they're tiny compared to what we're doing here on Outspoken.
Yeah, and I think this is one thing that I've really learned. Obviously, like, I'm a little bit younger than you and I don't have as much experience as you, but it's just taught me, and you're going to obviously know more because you've been doing this for years, Dan, but just how the media works. I mean, I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but you can see the way that they reacted to you when people were throwing all sorts of allegations at you that were simply unprovable. Like, no one has been able to prove any of this. And yet, you were effectively cancelled in minutes because you weren't part of this elitist club. Meanwhile, people, Phil Schofield, Hugh Edwards, they go undetected for years. Well, I say undetected, everybody knew, but they go protected for years. And then when they're not protected, they still are. When they get found out, they still get treated with the kid gloves. I mean, look how they treated you, and you did nothing wrong. There was nothing provable. Everything that Phil Schofield and Hugh Edwards done was completely provable, and they're still treated with the kid gloves because they've got friends in the right places. So if I see any working class person in the street, watch these types of shows, because trust me, if you're not in that little club, you get the things people can say about you, and they can just tarnish your reputation with no evidence to anyone, and that's your whole career over. But they can do some of the worst things. I'm even thinking, people like Ant and Dec who have done some pretty scandalous things, and they're still being celebrated at the top. It's bananas to me how they get away with this. And when normal people like us, do nothing wrong, they try and destroy you. I think normal working people should definitely start tuning into more things like this, because if you're not in a club, well, too bad. They can do whatever they want, and they don't care about normal people. They never have, and they never will.
No, they don't. They hate normal people, and certainly in my case, it was utterly despicable the way that the fake news agents were defending Hugh Edwards, a paedophile, while at the same time trying to amplify completely provably false allegations against me, which they spoke about on their show on the same day that they covered the allegations against Russell Brand. They are shameless, disgusting people. Emily Maitlis removed her post on X because she knows otherwise I would have sued. But did she have the good grace to apologize? Like hell. Because what they want to do is destroy their enemies. And their enemies are people who challenge the left-wing orthodoxy, which has been so powerful in this country for so long because of the dominant position of the British bashing corporation, the BBC. They despise people like me who believe the BBC shouldn't exist at all. Defund the entire organisation. We have to democratise the news. I feel so strongly about that. And more than anything, they are snobs. They are absolute snobs. And you're completely right, Sophie, to say that they hate working people. They look down their noses on these people. I've been to a party with John Sopel. it was a birthday party for a mutual friend. But I never really go to those types of events because it very, very clearly showed me the type of people he hangs out with in North London, the types of views that they espouse, and the way that they look down on good, honest people in this country. And so I think it's completely shameful that he was given that platform on the British Bashing Corporation for so long. I'd love them to go truly independent, and let's see if they could really hack it. But right now, they'll continue pocketing the money from Global. Global, by the way, a company which continues to lose tens of millions of pounds a year. Continuing our countdown at number 26, Zara Sultana, a new entry for the suspended Labour MP. But it's because Sultana really represents the deranged anti-Israel face of Labour, even accusing Starmer's government of being complicit of genocide. On the anniversary of October the 7th, she managed to push this message without mentioning Hamas once. And Sophie Corcoran, I would argue that in Zara Sultana, you have a truly extreme MP who remains completely beloved in Labour circles and proves that this party has not at all moved on from the anti-Semitism that so despicably typified the reign of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, Zara Sultana I don't think has ever grown out of university. She, I've seen people in university Labour Club that are more mature than her. She is quite literally a student activist to the T. She is an over-promoted student activist. And it's quite apt that her surname, of course, is Sultana, because she is an absolute fruitcake. And the problem is that, so we saw this with a couple of days ago with the MPs sort of signing names to build an airport in Pakistan. And she's coming out here with, when we talk about the Heathrow expansion, we desperately need a third runway at Heathrow. It will be enormous. It will be transformative for the British economy. Our country is declining. We need something like this to begin us on a path of growth. She declined it because of climate reasons. She called it indefensible. But here she is begging for an airport in Pakistan. She's a British MP, but she doesn't want a runway at a British airport because, God forbid, Britain get a bit of economic growth. But here she is signing letters whilst being a British MP, asking for an airport in Pakistan. So why doesn't she just go and be an MP for Pakistan? I'm sure she'd do a better job because she's not doing a very good job here.
No, she's not. And what's so interesting to me, based in Bougie, is that the Labour Party will never properly cut ties with this woman, will they?
No, they never will, because the Labour Party is more invested in everything else except their own country. They're more invested in Ukraine. They're more invested with Pakistani councillors. They're more invested in basically everything else. And for this woman to say that, we shouldn't build another lane in Heathrow, but we should build one in Pakistan. You see, this is the problem with, mass migration. I'm so sorry to say this, is because we are importing people into this country who don't really have a love, passion, or even concern. Like, as an MP, your main concern should be the country that you're serving. I mean, that's the whole point of being an MP. You are serving this country, but yet her concern is in Pakistan. And this is the problem with this mass migration, is that people are importing people into this country and teaching their children to come into this country, study in this country, make your money here, but then invest it elsewhere. That does not make any sense. And I just think that she should absolutely be sacked. In terms of her views on Palestine, I don't agree with what's happening to the Palestinian civilians, and I've been very clear on that. But in terms of just who she is as her character, not her character, in terms of her role, her focus should be in the UK. But again, the Labour Party, they just do not care about what's going on in their country, and that's why the Labour Party has turned into the loser party.
The loser party, I like that. And of course, the spiritual head of the loser party makes number 25 on the countdown this year, down 7 from 2024. I'm, of course, talking about the former globalist prime minister who still believes he's running the show and sometimes is, Tony Blair. Still pulling the strings behind the scenes. The PM responsible for the illegal Iraq war is now campaigning hard for full-on social media censorship, including a shutdown of X. He is lobbying hard to make his digital ID dream a reality. And Sophie Corcoran, my fear is that because Starmer is so devoid of ideas, because Starmer is so devoid of talent in his cabinet, and is really going to be struggling, let's be honest, over the next year or two, when the economy crashes, when the fury over the invasion of our country grows. I worry, Sophie, he is going to turn to Blair.
Yeah, I mean, look at the state of him. He's the kind of person you kind of see in your nightmares now. I can't believe he was once, described as this almighty, charismatic man, but he is the single person who is responsible for every single thing that is wrong with Britain today. He is the man that has led to this country being in the state of decline that it is. It's unquestionable that almost all of it can be attributed to bad decisions that he made, whether it's mass migration, whether it's some of the radical changes he made. He destroyed this country. And it's my generation, ultimately, that are paying the biggest price on this. I mean, we've essentially been pushed out of this country because of mass migration. He has ruined Britain, the future of this country, for me as a British person. It's him that is responsible. And there is only one former Prime Minister that we should ever consider wanting to come back in this country, and it's Margaret Thatcher, but obviously she can't. Definitely not this man. And I absolutely love the royal family. But for me, the biggest ever shame was when he was given a knighthood.
Mm-hmm.
It is absurd to me that a man who can lie about weapons of mass destruction and who can, make our British soldiers die in a war that is not their own, in a war that they should never been in, is despicable. And the fact that he got a knighthood is insane to me. And one of the things that really aggravates me as well, actually, is that Boris Johnson was essentially banned from the House of Commons for having a massive scandal, being such a terrible PM, for eating a bit of birthday cake, and because he lied to the House of Commons. This man lied to take this country into an illegal war that cost millions of lives, and he is not banned from the House of Commons, but Boris Johnson is, because he lied about a bit of birthday cake in the office that hurt no one. How?
Oh my God, you are on fire today, Sophie Corcoran, and my goodness, I could not agree more. Because, of course, we also see Alistair Campbell, who was behind the sexed up dossier that led so many millions into an illegal war, given mainstream media platforms all the time. Based in Bougie, I think one of the things that I find most terrifying about Blair, and we've seen it this year, he sat down with James O'Brien for an interview, which was all anti-Elon Musk, and it's all about censorship and control. That's what Blair wants. He wants digital ID. He wants control of the internet. He wants X to be shut down. It's truly terrifying and truly dystopian. I highly hope some of his ideas will be put to pasture because of the power of this new Trump administration, but I still fear his influence on Starmer.
Yeah, I definitely feel as though Tony Blair, he is a communist. It's that simple. Yeah. I could literally just end my sentence here. He is a communist, and that's that. But yeah, he is a communist because, one, this censoring of speech, this is what they used to do in Russia during the Stalin times. This is what they used to do in Africa during the 60s if anyone spoke out against the establishment. And now Tony Blair is now trying to encourage this, censoring of freedom of speech. What are these people trying to hide? What are you trying to hide that you won't allow independent journalists to just give their opinion? Second of all, it's just the warmongering. I just don't understand this obsession that these politicians have with war. Tony Blair, if you're ever watching this, you have a 23 to 25-year-old children. Send them to the war. Why are you sending our children to the war? So I just think that he's a communist.
Yes, we'll look at Starmer doing the same thing, though, with Ukraine.
They have children that could literally go fight in the war, but yet they are begging our children to go fight their wars for them, whilst ruining our country. What child between the ages of 16 to 24 is actually going to fight for this country when they have literally ruined it for us? Like Sophie said, every problem we are experiencing here in the UK started with Tony Blair. So why are we going to go fight for you? What he should do is get the immigrants that he imported to go fight his wars for him, plus his sons.
Yeah, well, I think Starmer, again, is almost trying to be inspired by Blair in terms of this Ukraine war. It's like, a politician in deep trouble often needs a war. because a war they believe will garner public opinion behind them, but most importantly, a war is something you can blame all of your problems on. But the financial ruin that is coming to this country is not simply down to Ukraine. A lot of it is down to the terrible decisions, the class war being waged, and the nut zero madness being introduced by Ed Miliband. Let's move on now, though, to number 24 in our countdown. She's down 14 positions from last year, but she's still there. Oh, sorry. He is still there. The nastiest, most unhinged trans influencer in the world, and that is saying something. Exposed this year as a total shill given his previous appearances on Good Morning Britain, which showed that he was opposed to trans people in women's sports, his attacks on J.K. Rowling are increasingly unhinged. Back in 2020, he even wrote, "I am not a fan of the divisive campaign that says anyone who calls themselves a woman should be treated like a woman at all times." But Donald Trump's decision to stand up for women has helped to redress the balance. However, India Willoughby, based in Bougie, still remains one of these extremists who attacks the likes of J.K. Rowling. And isn't it fascinating that he has been exposed for actually previously having expressed views very similar to J.K. Rowling on the trans issue, and specifically on the issue of trans people in women's sport, which makes me believe India Willoughby is also on the grift train.
These trans people, it's like they give me a headache. Like every single time a trans person speaks, I just want to scream because everything they say is just absolute confusion. How can you as a trans person believe that being a woman is not due to your DNA or how you were born, but at the same time contradict yourself by saying that women shouldn't be in women's sports, but at the same time being a man dressed as a woman? Make it make sense. These trans people, is like they just speak with no sense. They don't know what's coming out of their mouth, as long as it sounds fancy, as long as it sounds popular. And I just can't stand it. I'm sick and tired of their hypocrisy.
Sophie, what do you make of India Willoughby?
Complete grifter, 100%. Doesn't believe in anything he says. He's becoming more and more unhinged as time goes on because people feed into him. I mean, this guy is utterly insane, utterly insane. I've had many spats with him, and yeah, complete grifter on the gravy train, full on. Shouldn't be trusted, in my opinion. That's the thing people need to realize. A lot of these people do not actually believe in what they say. They're doing it because they know that it's a way to get famous, it's a way to get attention, and it's a way to get money.
Yeah, I totally agree. It really, really is. And that's why India Willoughby has dropped so far down the list this year, done 14 positions, because actually his grift has been exposed, and Donald Trump has, thank God, changed the whole discussion around that very, very important issue of protecting women's sport and making sure that women's sport can only be taken by biological women. Continuing our countdown of the worst people in the UK today, at number 23, a new entry for Charlene White, woke ITV's race baiter. She's another left-wing activist who has destroyed ITV News. Desperate to be famous, White was the first campmate voted out of I'm a Celebrity because viewers quickly worked out what she's all about. And that's about promoting a double standard where diversity is everything, but a panel of all black presenters on Loose Women is to be celebrated. When I pointed out her rank hypocrisy, rather than address the argument, she despicably claimed I was riling the racists for clouts and clicks. And Sophie Corcoran, I would argue that the only person who is riling racists for clout and clicks is this woman, Charlene White. Because how, on the one hand, can you say that it's completely wrong for there to be an all-white panel on ITV's Loose Women, but then say that if you say that it's not diverse to have an all-black panel, you are in some way a racist?
Yeah, well, quite. And this is something that we point out a lot. When it's in sports. Whenever you see, you know, for example, when our Lionesses won the Euros, everyone was like, well, pretty much all of the players were white. And I'm like, well, all right, well, all of the 4x4 women's sprinters in the Olympics were black. Should we take their medal? No, because they earned it. And this obsession with diversity needs to be more than just skin color. I mean, Loose Women has, to be fair, I'm secretly a massive Loose Women fan, got to say. But there needs to be a greater diversity in the panel beyond just skin color, diversity of industry, diversity of age, diversity of background. That's real diversity. Not
well, yes,
just
Sophie,
skin
because
color.
look at this picture, and this is the point that I was
They're
making,
all
right?
old women. They're all old women.
Well, yes, but actually, I spoke to an insider at ITV who said it's not just that. They are all a particular type of black woman who, with a similar past, they all live in London. They are all very, very similar. So there's actually no diversity there.
No, exactly. And ITV should focus on perhaps getting people of a range of ages and different backgrounds. You get more diversity of thought by getting people who are from different backgrounds, who perhaps have had different careers, especially in Loose Women. You know, some of them are journalists, some of them are sports people. You'll get better conversation having that than if you just, but well, it looks diverse because they're all brown. I mean, it's just a lazy way of doing diversity, and it's something that I've always spoken about. Actually, I'm going to go ramble on something different, but when you look at diversity schemes, going for, you know, black hiring and just looking at skin color diversity is the laziest way to achieve diversity. You know, the real way of achieving diversity is having people from working class backgrounds, from north, from south, who have done different jobs before, perhaps who are neurodivergent maybe, or something different. Get a mix. This is not diversity, but I think the public made their opinion pretty clear on her when she got voted out first, by the way. And she got voted out first in a season of people who perhaps came into the season not exactly being loved by the public. So that should tell you everything she needs to know. And I think she was surprised to get voted off first, because I think she thinks she's much more loved than she actually is.
Yeah, she
she's
was
glad. I think she's quite a boring person. There's some real great Loose Women, like, you know, Judy Love, those guys. They're actually really entertaining. Charlene is actually really boring.
And she's not a nice person. That's the thing. She isn't a nice person. I think it was highly offensive what she did to me based in Bougie, because I think it is totally acceptable to have a debate about what diversity means, because surely we cannot continue to live in a two-tier society. If it's not right for it to be an all-white panel, then how is it right for it to be an all-black panel?
Yeah, Charlene White, if you ever see this, I have a question for you. Do you want equality or do you want privilege? Because a lot of black people are so, like, it doesn't sound like they actually want equality. They just want privilege. You can't sit here and say, I want diversity, whilst also having an all-black panel. It's like someone putting up a sign in a Chinese restaurant saying this is a Chinese buffet, but the only thing they are selling is sweet and sour chicken. There's no range, there's no options. And that is exactly why she got kicked out of the show she was on, is because she's boring. And this is what I dislike about this whole diversity DEI thing, is that it takes away from the opportunity of people who are actually talented, who are actually good at what they do. And just the concept of just getting people on a show, getting people in a job based on their skin color and not their talent makes no sense. And like Sophie pointed out, they're all the same. They're all the same age range. They're all the same size. They're all the same skin color. This is not diversity. I would have loved it if we saw an Asian woman, we saw a Pakistani woman, we saw a white woman. That would have been much more delicious. For example, there's this show called The Real in America.
I know it. Yes.
Black woman, they have an Asian woman, they have a Hispanic woman, and it just works. Like, that's what diversity looks like. But this, and then to turn around and say that you're a racist because you said, actually, how is this diversity? Every single person is black. It's just absolutely insane. And it's just, these will be the same people that will quote Martin Luther King on Black History Month saying, oh, we should not be judged by we shouldn't be judged by the color of the skin tone. This, but at the same time, they continue to judge people by the color of the skin tone. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Totally. And I think as well, for me, it's how easy it is now based in Bougie for them to throw around a term like racist. I mean, honestly, just a few years ago, making that type of claim could destroy someone. It could destroy someone's reputation. It could destroy someone's career. It could destroy someone's mental health. But the problem is, these type of hard leftists have cheapened the term. And it actually upsets me so much, because what it means is that real racism now is almost impossible to decipher because these people on the left, for political reasons, are so desperate to throw the racist term at people who, let's be honest, just disagree with them politically or just call out their hypocrisy.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I think the term racism, they've weaponized it the same way they weaponized the Me Too movement. You know, you see all these young women who made bad sexual decisions, now regretting their decisions and calling it the R word. And it ruins it for the people who actually have experienced the R word. It's the same thing with racism. There's people that have actually experienced real racism. And to say that Dan Wootton is racist all because he pointed out the fact that this is an all black panel, and if you want it to be diverse, then have a diverse panel, is absolutely insane. And the thing that's so hilarious is if Dan's racist, how am I on your show every other month? Please make it make sense.
Well, that is a good point. But what's even most crazy though is I didn't even point out anything to do with their ethnicity. I just said, this is how woke ITV does diversity. I was just making the point. But look, it's interesting. We see Candace Owens there, and I think it's really important to look at what you just brought up, Based in Bougie, because Sophie Corcoran, Candace Owens, and she's obviously a very controversial character. I love her. I know, by the way, that doesn't mean I sign up to every single position she takes, but I don't feel I need to justify that. She's an incredible broadcaster, a very, very interesting talent. And she is going hard now down this path of looking into the Me Too movement, as Based in Bougie said, because actually, again, it was weaponized against a whole load of men where there was a desire to cancel them for one reason or another, when in fact, this was all about women who regretted decisions in their past. And I think she is brave for doing that. I think she's completely correct. You might remember I had the first interview with Kevin Spacey, who I absolutely believe has been a victim of a Me Too witch hunt. And so again, this is how the independent media, I guess, can start bringing some change to those issues, whereas the Charlene Whites of this world just continue down the path of the witch hunt.
Well, I think people obviously need to understand that these guys don't even write any of the stuff that they're saying. It's all done for them by
That's
young
true.
producers
I
in the background.
can vouch for that.
And they simply just read off of auto cues. So even the work that they do, they're not actually doing themselves. It's not their own thoughts. But nonetheless, I've always found something quite interesting, obviously for me, and I'm sure Based in Bougie can echo, and perhaps even yourself, Dan, is that whether, if you're right wing, if you're like, for me, for example, obviously I'm neurodivergent, for Based in Bougie, obviously, and for you, whenever you're part of the diversity tick box, there are actually, no, you can't be this because you're right wing. Well, in actual fact, I still am, pal. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, all of a sudden it just discounts. All of a sudden Based in Bougie is not black because she's right wing. I don't have a learning disability because I'm right wing. It's like,
and I'm not gay. I'm not gay because I'm right wing.
Yeah,
it's so true. It is so true. Oh, very good point. Look, we're going to continue the countdown in just 1 minute, so don't go anywhere. Sophie Corcoran and Based and Bougie. But first, this episode of Outspoken is brought to you by Manscaped, the global leader in men's lifestyle and grooming. Every man knows the unbeatable feeling of a fresh barbershop shave. But what if I told you that you no longer have to wait weeks or even months between appointments to experience it? Introducing Manscaped's newest innovation, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver, the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of a professional shave right into your home. So whether you're after that daily silky smooth finish or prefer to maintain a rugged 5 o'clock shadow, like me, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver, trust me, is your go-to for precision and style every time. So I had loads of shaving mishaps in my past, but I absolutely love using Manscaped. It has improved my grooming routine no end, and actually my confidence with it. What makes the Chairman Pro stand out is its versatility and precision. So there are 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. There's the skin-safe 4-blade foil for when you want a close, smooth shave. But then if you want the stubble look like me, you can just switch to the skin-safe stubble trimmer. Both heads designed with skin-safe technology, which helps reduce razor burn. I never get it anymore. Or irritation. I never get that anymore either. So it actually leaves my skin feeling smooth and comfortable after every stage. reduces redness and discomfort too. There's FlexJust technology, which ensures a superior shave by allowing both blades and the pivoting head to seamlessly adapt to the unique contours of your face. It's also gentle on the neck area too. You're going to love this as well. It's waterproof, which means you can use it in the shower, or if you don't want to use it in the shower, but you want to rinse it off very easily, you can just do so in the sink and you are all set. So get the Chairman Pro today. Experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. Head on over to Manscaped and join the over 11 million men worldwide, including me, who trust Manscaped by using the code Outspoken for free shipping and 20% off. That's manscaped.com, using the code Outspoken for free shipping and a whopping 20% discount on your entire order. But now, back to the show. We continue our countdown of the UK's worst people in the world today. And at number 22, a new entry for the establishment media dinosaur, Ian Hislop. The Have I Got News For You and Private Eye era is over. Hislop just doesn't know it yet. The so-called journalist who used to view himself as someone who was campaigning and someone who would fight against the grain now simply parrots the establishment narrative, including refusing to hold a left-wing government accountable. Then he's also just a bit of a loser. This year, he claimed to be the target of a shooting in a black cab, when it turned out it was actually just a mechanical fault that had caused the back window to shatter. Sophie Corcoran, Ian Hislop, he's just a dinosaur. He's just totally now someone who goes along with whatever the MSM establishment narrative is, and how disappointing.
Yeah, I think he's past his sell-by date a little bit. But then I think a lot of these left-wing comedians are, because, you know, I guess back in the day, they would have been the anti-establishment, and comedy was all about being, you know, anti-establishment, being a rebel, being funny. But now they're just parroting the establishment. They are the establishment. So therefore, they're just not funny anymore, because comedy just doesn't work like that. The time has changed. You know, comedy is all about, you know, tiptoeing over the line and you know, pushing the boundaries and taking risks, and they just don't do it anymore. They're just not funny.
And what I love, Base and Bougie, is he genuinely thought he was so important that they must have been after him. They must have been trying to get him in his black cab. No. Just the black window broke. And literally, this was so mortifying, because there'd been this big statement released and they were like talking about the fact, oh, do you have enemies? Do you have enemies? It's like, my God, the self-obsession of this man is off the scale.
Can I just be honest? The fact that I didn't even know who he was until you actually decided to speak about him.
I love that.
He's not relevant.
No, because you're the youth.
Honest.
You're the future. And you, I'm glad you don't know who Ian Hislop is. I think that's
Who
beautiful.
I'll be so honest, I don't have much to say about him except who he is. I think if he was known, that would have had something to say about
I love that, because the less said about Ian Hislop, the better, and the fact that young people don't know about him is a brilliant thing. So let's move on. Love that, because that's actually the most devastating thing for Ian Hislop if you don't know who he is. So that's just brilliant. At number 21, Bridget Phillipson. A new entry for the education secretary waging class war. The ultimate champagne socialist, Phillipson took £14,000 from Lord Ali, remember that, to pay for her 40th birthday? But then the moment she was in power, pushed ahead with her spiteful policy of levying VAT on private school fees, causing chaos to many students competing their GCSEs or A-levels. Clearly incompetent, she is widely expected to be reshuffled out of the job. But the damage has been done, Based and Bougie. And the fact that she, someone who relied on a billionaire donor to pay for her 40th birthday party, thinks she has a right to wage class warfare, says it all. Do as I say, not as I do. She is the ultimate Labour failure.
I can't make sense of Labour. I just can't make sense of them. You have one person spending 40,000 on her 40th birthday, however that much that was. You have 75,000 being spent on DEI. You have millions going into Ukraine. Like, when is the country finally going to be prioritized? It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think it's just an absolute joke how little they care for this country. And what they don't understand is that me, especially my generation, we are paying attention to this. And this is why more and more people are becoming more right-leaning, because the Labour Party, aka the loser party, they're just making an absolute mockery of themselves. It's like, you just cannot make up what is going on in this Labour Party. And I just think 40,000 on a birthday party, literally all you need is a cake, a little bit of plastic cups. Like, why this? Is this just this very snobbish, prestigious behaviour from the Labour Party that I just do not like and despise? And yeah, I'll either be voting Reform or UKIP. Most definitely not Labour.
Yeah, indeed. And Sophie Corcoran, I mean, the problem is Bridget Phillipson is just so clearly out of her depth. Just like Rachel from Accounts, so clearly out of her depth. And part of that is because the mainstream media was so in their pockets, in Labour's pockets, they didn't do any of that due diligence before the election. And is it any wonder, given there were members of the mainstream media who were invited to her 40th birthday party, paid for by Lord Ali with a £14,000 donation? Does that not just show you, Sophie, what we were talking about? It's proof that they are all just in this little club together, and they do not care about the people. They just care about themselves.
I think the VAT on private school is one of the most vindictive and the most spiteful and hateful policies that I think we've actually ever seen the government introduce. And people will talk about the private school kids, and some of the things that they've been saying coming out of it is, they don't forget, a lot of private schools are actually filled with children with special educational needs because they don't really fit or they don't learn well in a mainstream setting. And they were sort of coming out here saying, look, all these numbers, there's loads of kids with special needs in private schools, they're fudging the system, all of this. No, there's loads of special needs kids in private schools because they are better for kids with special needs, with smaller class sizes, perhaps better tutoring or whatever that suit children with special needs that you don't get serviced in mainstream schools. So it basically just destroyed the futures of all of these special educational needs kids. For what? Because the kids that go to Eton, they can still afford the VAT. It's the middle class, the parents of middle class children who really want to, who save up their whole entire lives to send their kids to middle of the road private schools just because they don't want to send them to mainstream schools because our mainstream schools are falling apart. Or it's mostly impacting special needs kids whose parents who don't have education, who have parents whose parents send them into private schools because they simply cannot cope in the mainstream school. You cannot force these children into a mainstream school. They just don't learn there. It doesn't matter. So in actual fact, they've just screwed social mobility for the entire country because their jealousy and their hatred of a few wealthy individuals has caused them to basically put the knife to kids. They are literally stabbing children in the back. This isn't a policy that's aimed at rich millionaires. This is a policy directly aimed at children. How can you do this to a bunch of innocent children, many of them who have special needs? And one of the things that you said, you are absolutely right. If I want to celebrate my birthday, I'm going down to the Wetherspoons. That's what I'm doing. And this is why our voices are so important, because I'm actually a normal person.
Yes.
I go down to the Wetherspoons. I go and play the Sunday League football. People that are having 14 grand birthday parties, they ain't like you, mate.
I know,
like
but 14 grand, not 14 grand of your own money though. 14 grand of billionaires' money, and then deciding to invite a whole load of journalists so that they give you easy coverage. I mean, it's disgusting. If it had been done by the other side, it would be a national scandal. But yeah, I think it's good we're normal, because I can't think of anything worse than being at Bridget Phillipson's birthday party with a whole load of BBC journalists. Let me tell you, I'd much rather be down the Wetherspoons. But I love having both of you all the time. Thank you. Sophie Corcoran, Based, and Bougie, my superstar panel. We will see you again very soon. Now, remember, there is no uncancelled after show this week because, as you might know, I am on the Mark Stein cruise. Hopefully the ship hasn't sunk or anything like that by this point. Follow me on social media. You'll get the latest updates there at Dan Wootton on X, on Instagram, and at Outspoken Dan on TikTok. But don't worry, we do return live on Monday, the Uncancelled After Show back on Monday. To watch from them, please do sign up at www.outspoken.live. Let me tell you, the Outspoken Substack is a way to get the latest breaking news, join a thriving community, and also communicate directly with me. There is a completely free option, and this is the best way by signing up to protect me against big tech censorship and ultimately cancellation. You know they want to shut me up, so I really do need you to sign up. It will just take you 1 minute. It means the world to me. www.outspoken.live. But I'm so excited because tomorrow we are into the top 20 of the 50 worst people in the UK today. We continue our countdown at 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Join me then, but do hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube Rumble. Turn on the notification bell, then you'll be alerted to our brand new episode. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.